panélistes des 3 conseils subventionnaires. Et bien sûr, je remercie d'avance aussi vous les participants de prendre le temps de venir ici parce que nous n'aurons probablement pas le temps à la fin. Le thème de notre forum aujourd'hui, c'est la COVID-19 et son impact sur la recherche. Inutile de dire que ce thème-là est extrêmement important. Le 13 mars, lorsque nous sommes tous passés à l'enseignement en ligne ou à distance, ou appelez ça comme vous voulez, nous avons eu beaucoup de séances sur la propriété intellectuelle, sur la gouvernance collégiale, mais le volet de notre travail tout aussi important dont nous n'avons pas parlé aussi, c'est l'impact sur la recherche. Donc, je vais dire quelques mots sur le déroulement de la séance. Dans un premier temps, je vais présenter nos 4 panélistes, donc je vais les présenter une à la fois pour qu'ils... Ensuite, slides are attached in chat in English and French, so please follow along in the language of your choice. Presentation will be followed by a Q&A. Please send your question through Q&A function or in the chat. We will also be asking some questions that were submitted in advance. We will likely not have time to get to all questions asked, but we will do our best to accommodate as many as possible. And those not answered will likely inform Tree Council and CAUT communication moving forward. Donc, étant donné le nombre de participants, je vous demanderai de fermer vos micros et pour la période de questions, évidemment, d'utiliser le chat ou d'utiliser le chat. La session d'aujourd'hui est enregistrée et sera disponible sur le web plus tard, donc si vous voulez y revenir. Et j'aimerais aussi dire que sur le site de l'ACPU, vous avez une section très, très riche et qui est régulièrement mise à jour de questions-réponses sur certains des points qui vont être soulevés aujourd'hui. Donc, sans plus tarder, je vais introduire notre première panéliste, Madame Dominique Bérubé. Dr Bérubé a été nommée vice-présidente recherche du CRSH en octobre 2019. À ce titre, elle est chargée d'élaborer la vision à long terme et les orientations des principaux programmes de financement de la recherche de l'organisme. Elle a aussi occupé plusieurs responsabilités à l'Université de Montréal. Madame Bérubé, merci beaucoup et bienvenue. On ne vous entend pas, donc
voilà.
Parfait.
So that's
Merci.
my cue. So that's my cue to start. So apologies, I arrived late. So the good thing is that not everybody was online, so nobody saw me starting the presentation before the meeting has even started. So apologies for the ones that were already online, and thank you for your patience. We're quite busy nowadays at the agencies, just like researchers in the community in general. And I think I'm just sharing my screen at this point. The slideshow is a bit long to start. Here it is. So here, so the presentation, so Shirk is just going to start, and we do have a few considerations at the Tri-Council level, obviously. Lots of harmonization, collaboration, discussion with my colleagues that are presenting also today to make sure that we provide as measures as harmonized as possible, recognizing that there are some differences between the agencies that we need to take into account in the management of our programs, but also for the impact on our respective communities. So since the start of the pandemic, I think there are a few things that we moved along with adjustments and obviously new measures that are going to be put in place in the following weeks, and always taking into considerations, really recognizing that the interruptions of research activities are extremely important, and that there are many administrative challenges caused by the pandemic. On the social sciences and humanities communities, we did hear even that the pandemic was in fact transforming the science itself because of the impact on the methodologies and the incapacity to continue some research that had been started with totally different plans initially. Also recognizing that our capacity is also affected within SSHRC. We do have some moving everybody to work in 3 days from telework as some clear challenges. We don't benefit from the same support and technology, although all the efforts are made to be able to deliver our program. Which is also consideration is that we really focus on the continuity of business. So putting aside maybe some strategic initiatives, postponing some deadlines, a bit of delays in some results communication, but definitely trying to avoid cancellations of competition and ensure that we're going to be able to deliver our business in the upcoming year. Obviously, when everything started, we thought weeks. We definitely are talking about months now, and we need to think about at least midterm in terms of the situation. Also, lots of conversation around targeted investment in COVID-19, and I'll come back to that later in the presentation. But when we discuss about those investments, whether it was to support the active grants and the researchers and the students and the awardees, definitely we wanted to make sure that we were not going to mortgage the future years also, and all those early career researchers and all these other researchers that want to apply in the future competition. So there's a balance to get between investing in supporting the active grants versus making sure of maintaining access to research funding for the future. So the first information, that's information that has been implemented mostly at the Tri-Council level, definitely in CERC and SSHRC together, since we do have some financial services together, and we do follow the Tri-Agency Guide on Financial Administration. So we did proceed with no cost extension, just recognizing that everybody was delayed, everybody was stopped. So we provided immediately no cost extension, and we focused between February 1st and March 31st, 2021, simply because of the volume. Just providing those extension to all of these grants already represented quite some administrative work. It was not possible to proceed all the grants at the same time. We do have processes, and that's a concern in the community. We do have some processes to take into account any interruption of research and COVID-19, and we confirm COVID-19 is going to be considered as the rationale for interruptions and delays and cancellations of projects. So no concerns around that. We also, the two following elements, definitely confirm flexibility to institutions. With the renewed Tri-Agency Guide, it's really focusing on providing flexibility in institutions that they can put in place their own policies, and really telling and reassuring the institution that it's normal to consider these costs as eligible costs, and also reducing the burden on the institutions in terms of financial reports and on the researchers, of course. Targeted research on COVID-19, this was essentially led by CIHR, so I let my colleague Adrian to talk more about it. But definitely first call was an initiative with partners. SSHRC contributed to fund partly some of these projects, 8 million on the total of 54. Since then, plenty more money that's been invested in that. And we do have two special calls, small grants, partnership engaged grants. The next two competition will have a COVID-19 stream. And this was in response to our leaders, SSHRC leaders community and conversation we had, that many researchers were, yes, interrupted in their research, but having many new opportunities to explore some COVID-19 related research, and we wanted to be able to support those initiatives. We have not made the decision yet if other competitions such as Insight, IDG would then be open in the future for those special COVID-19. This is to be seen if the demand is sufficient and if we have the funding to do it. Donc ça, c'est un peu plus d'informations sur les subventions d'engagement partenarial, justement. Ce sont des petites subventions, seulement de 7 000 à 25 000, qui d'habitude, on ne peut en détenir qu'une seule subvention. Donc, quelques modifications qu'on a fait, on permet aux gens de détenir non seulement une subvention engagement partenarial régulière, mais également jusqu'à 2 subventions COVID-19 là, dans les 2 prochains concours. Et on permet la collaboration avec des associations, organisations qui normalement offrent des services aux institutions postsecondaires. Donc, il y a plusieurs, auparavant, pour éviter les conflits d'intérêts, des universités qui normalement donneraient des contrats de service, on laissait tomber ça, mais étant donné l'intérêt de poursuivre de la recherche sur les questions éducatives, on a décidé de permettre pour ces concours ce genre de partenariat. So the impacts on the programs themselves, you know, I mentioned initially that we needed to make that decision about providing support towards the active grant holders and the scholarship and fellowship holders. So recognizing that the federal government really provided us with important investment last April 22nd by announcing $291.6 million exactly to be able to do that. Unfortunately, it's not been released yet. It's coming now. We can tell that it's really coming quickly. We finally add the last information that we needed to be able to roll out these investments. And we're going to be able to provide a 4-month extension to expiring scholarships and postdoctoral fellows. Objective really being able to support these students that had no other revenues than their at that point and really needed the support. And we're going to be able to support also all active, mostly core programs, active grant holders to support trainees, but also research personnel on these grants. And this is a tri-council measures, and it's going to be applied across the 3 councils, and my colleague can also provide information. I'll skip on if you have questions about the scholarship and fellowship, we can respond later on. I don't want to take too much time in my presentation. A lot of deadline date changes, obviously, in our competitions. You know, it's for us, obviously, because we needed to adjust our processes, but also for the community to give them more time sometimes to respond. So we made a few changes. All of these changes are in fact on the SSHRC COVID-19 page. Definitely encourage the community to consult that page. That is the resource to see. There might even be some newer changes since I did that slide. So definitely the reference is that web page to consult all the changes to the program. A slight note at the top of the slide, inside deadline moved to October 1st. This is not a COVID-19 related decision. This is a last year kerfuffle with the volume and the move on our, we harmonized the doctoral program, CGS doctoral program with the other agencies. We changed the date of application of the doctoral. It interfered with the October 15 inside deadline, and the legacy system could not manage the volume. So at that point, we are moving the inside deadline to October 1st to be able to manage all of the competitions. Important aspect for the community is the changes we add to implement in the adjudication processes. Of course, all of our adjudication meetings are being held virtually, some of them over the phone, some of them over video conferences. We do face some limitations still for managing video conference adjudication because of the bandwidth in the different, of course, homes of our agencies. Thank you for the lunch. I've got service. We're applying, of course, we developed that for the inside development grants that we needed to adjudicate in May, but this will also be applied to the next spring competition, partnership engage, and a connection. We also put in place, we used to mail results and through snail mail to all applicants. So that was we have no mail room anymore at SSHRC and NSERC. So suddenly had to introduce that was a great incentive for a new technology, put in place a SharePoint site to provide secure notification. It's working well, although there are a few delays because of the volume of everything we need to put online. So please be patient for that. Flexibility, yes. So about the adjudication process, lots of questions from our community because since their research is usually not done in a lab, you know, it can be outside with communities. The impact of the pandemic are pretty strong on that kind of research and the methodologies. So there was a lot of concern in the community about how is my application next fall going to be assessed if the pandemic endures. So we don't know if the pandemic is going to, and the physical distanciation is going to continue. So we're just at this point providing flexibility for the researchers who want to be able to include what I would call the plan B. You know, what's it? What am I going to do if I can't do it that way? I have that other solution. It does bring some other concerns that somebody that would not include a plan B, would they be negatively input? No, that's not the, it's really to reassure the researchers. It's a grant that we're giving. We're used to researchers adapting their research, and they still have that flexibility given the circumstances to adapt their research to deliver on the objective that they are and the challenges that they are facing. Quelques informations sur les programmes 3 conseils. Il n'y avait pas de concours majeur du genre concours apogée, chaire d'excellence en cours, ce qui était quand même une bonne nouvelle. C'était seulement le Fonds Nouvelles Frontières, le fameux NFREF. Bien sûr, nous avons été pour les chaires de recherche du Canada, nous avons simplement annulé un cycle d'évaluation et condensé les évaluations dans les 2 autres cycles qui restaient. Nous avons ralenti quelques activités en lien avec l'équité, la diversité et l'inclusion, mais nous reprenons l'ensemble de ces activités-là au cours du mois de juin et nous espérons toujours atteindre nos objectifs d'implantation de l'addendum 2019 pour le cours de l'année. Ça fait vraiment partie de nos priorités et on consacre beaucoup d'énergie à ça. On the front of the CFREF Circ and C150, mostly midterm visits that are being postponed and delayed, so we're just going to take that back. The RSF, not much to say at this point. The biggest changes for the Tri-Council programs were on the NFREF side. So there was a possibility to provide direct support to the 2018 competition holders. Those were, as you remember, early career researchers. So we thought it was important to move quickly to provide them that support, same support that we're going to be able to provide, or approximately same support that we're going to be able to provide to the other grant holders with the 291 million investment. And so we could move on that because there was budget disponibility within the framework. So we moved on that part. And we also delayed the transformation stream to July 15. The universities were definitely not in the mood of going through that competition at that time. So we pushed it, and the final timeline should be published pretty soon on that. Just a quick final word on Tri-Agency Initiative. I did mention that the focus was on the delivery of our program. On continue bien sûr toute la collaboration avec nos collègues des autres agences, que ce soit sur la stratégie de recherche autochtone, également sur le remplacement de nos systèmes informatiques par un système commun, les plans d'équité et de soutien aux nouveaux chercheurs, toutes des initiatives que nous continuons à un rythme plus ralenti dans le contexte des autres activités prioritaires qu'on doit implanter. So with that, I'll stop there and I'll give it back, stop sharing. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Bérubé, très intéressant. Maintenant, je vais céder la parole au Dr Gouzenay, donc je vais l'introduire très brièvement. Dr. Gouzenay joined NSHRC in February 2019 as Vice President, Research, Grants and Scholarship Directorate. Danica was formerly Associate Vice President, Tri-Agency Institutional Program Secretariat at Social Science and Humanity Research Council. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Gouzenay, et bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup à vous et bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. Can we move to the next slide, please, in English? Merci beaucoup. So much like SSHRC, NSERC continues to make adjustments to its operations as we monitor the evolution and impact of COVID. We're continuing to support our grants, our scholarships, and our award recipients, as well as the applicants, peer reviewers, and of course our employees as we're adapting to this new work from home situation. As the situation evolves, we will continue to be monitoring our programs and making adaptations as we go. We're focused on keeping our programs and our peer review as close to possible to business as usual, given the circumstances, but we do have to make adjustments as needed. I did want to add that we recognize that COVID is, of course, affecting your work and your ability to conduct research, and we will continue to support the research community as we all adapt to these challenges. Much of the measures were shared by Dominic just earlier that we've also adapted in a tri-council format, so I won't repeat a lot of them in the interest of time. What I would like to do is provide updates on NSERC discovery grants primarily, and some scholarships and fellowships measures that we've taken in response to COVID. So in addition to the extensions in time that Dominic mentioned, NSERC announced extensions with funding, full funding for all active discovery grant holders. And so a few key points on this. Active grants, so there has to be active grant holders, means those with payments planned in the 2021 fiscal year or later, including the discovery grants that were just awarded in the 2020 competition. We're going to be communicating the process for this in the upcoming few weeks, reaching out to all eligible PIs, but we will start first with those who are due for renewal in the upcoming competition. So those who have to come in with an NOI in August before they apply in November. We have heard certainly the need to be as flexible as possible about whether or not you accept that extension, recognizing that we don't know what the future holds and when people can get back to their labs. So we will try to be as flexible as possible, balancing the need to manage our peer review at the same time. So we will try to let you go as long as you can before you accept the extension, and then we operationally will need to draw a line some point. Beyond the upcoming Discovery Grants competition, we are keeping a careful eye on all of our programs and extending deadlines for applications and reporting requirements, as well as providing any needed flexibility that we can. For example, in our promo science, we've offered flexibility so that the grant holders can now adapt to a virtual program delivery. Next slide, please. Merci beaucoup. En français, oui, ça va mieux. Merci. Donc, comme le CRSH, les titulaires d'une bourse de formation en recherche peuvent reporter la date d'entrée en vigueur de leur bourse ou demander une interruption non payée de leur bourse pour une période d'1 an plus 4 mois en raison de la pandémie. En plus, on continue d'appuyer les titulaires d'une bourse de formation en recherche qui, en raison des défis que pose la pandémie, mènent des travaux de recherche uniquement à temps partiel. Les titulaires peuvent continuer de détenir leur bourse et le CRSNG versera le plein montant de la bourse. Le montant des versements ne sera pas calculé au prorata et la date de fin de la bourse ne sera pas modifiée. Enfin, pour notre programme bourse de recherche de premier cycle, la date limite de présentation des demandes était suspendue. Le CRSNG continuera d'accepter les demandes après le 1er mai sans pénalité. Aussi, on offre beaucoup de la flexibilité à propos de durée de travail, de temps partiel et de travail à distance pour les étudiants. At this point, I will pass it over to my colleague, and I think he will be introduced now to talk about other NSERC measures. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Gouzenay. Donc, je vais introduire le Dr. Fortin, mais juste, j'aimerais, si vous pouvez fermer vos microphones, parce que je crois qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui entendent du bruit de fond dans leur écouteur, donc j'imagine c'est parce que tous les microphones ne sont pas fermés. Donc, le Dr. Marc Fortin est vice-président de la direction des partenariats de recherche du Conseil de recherche en sciences naturelles et en génie du Canada. Il dirige plusieurs programmes de soutien à la recherche, regroupant les chercheurs du secteur académique avec d'autres organisations pour la génération de nouvelles connaissances et de nouveaux impacts pour le Canada. Il a aussi occupé plusieurs postes à l'Université McGill. Monsieur Fortin, merci et bienvenue.
Donc, merci de nous accueillir aujourd'hui. Ça nous fait toujours plaisir de continuer les conversations avec la communauté. Nous dépendons de votre input pour façonner les ajustements que nous faisons et les initiatives que nous lançons de notre côté. So thank you for having us. I'll talk more specifically about partnership grants at NSERC, partnership grants that were over the last year coalesced into a new program called Alliance. So the first thing we've done is we've allowed the research community to access rapid response grants, $50,000 for 1 year, in relation to the COVID pandemic. So that is if members of the academic community had or have expertise to contribute, knowledge to bring, solutions to bring forward in the context of COVID. We want to see them. We want that knowledge to be applied. And we're providing rapid response grants of $50,000 for a year. I say rapid response because we usually process those in about a week. We've also allowed the research community and the user community to be able to make connections. So we're posting on our website on NSERC, we're posting challenges, knowledge gaps, issues, or opportunities that the user community is facing. We're sharing that with the entire research community that we are funding, and we're inviting researchers to apply for those Rapid Response Alliance grants in order to be able to address one of the challenges identified by either industrial partners, not-for-profit, or public sector organizations. La prochaine diapo, s'il vous plaît. Alors, vous avez le message en français, donc rapidement, il s'agit de soutenir l'application des connaissances qui existent dans la communauté académique en relation avec la pandémie COVID-19. Et vous pouvez trouver sur notre site web les liens qui permettent d'identifier certains des défis auxquels nos partenaires font face. Et vous pouvez toujours appliquer pour une de ces subventions COVID Alliance qui sont traitées rapidement. Prochaine diapo, s'il vous plaît. And in the meantime, of course, our Alliance program remains available. And that is grants for up to $1 million a year for up to 5 years. I said earlier, the COVID Alliance grants are processed rapidly. They're up to $50,000 for up to 1 year. Of course, if the project develops more significantly, that project will be able to be transitioned to a regular COVID Alliance over the coming year. Option 1 up to $1 million a year, or option 2 up to $100,000 a year. You have the links there. I don't want to spend too much time on the conventional Alliance program. Now, I saw on the screen flash rapidly one questions. There's quite a few questions in the chat there, and it's hard for us to speak and monitor the questions at the same time, but we'll leave time for questions a little later. One of the questions was in relation to the fact that partners who were contributing funding to partnership grants, those partners, either in the industrial or not-for-profit sectors, are facing challenges. We recognize that. So number one, it is always possible to seek an extension of the current grants. And that's something we've done in the past on a regular basis. And we recognize the current context. Second, the Prime Minister has announced an investment of $291 million. Dominique has mentioned it earlier in her presentation. $291 million that were announced on April 22nd, and that will provide funding for stabilizing the teams, providing funding for students, trainees, postdocs that were paid from those research grants for a period of up to 3 months when paid from research grants. Like Dominique mentioned, we've just received from government I believe, the last directions and instructions in relation to that funding, and we hope to be able to share that very, very soon. So that will provide some compensation for salaries, for salaries and scholarships and fellowships for people involved in those projects. We're also continuing discussions with government as to how we will help partners continue to be involved in research, development, innovation. But those measures are still under discussion, and more to come on this. I'll stop here, but I'm sure there's many more questions and I'll be happy to answer them later. So back to you. Merci.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Dr. Fortin. Je vais introduire notre quatrième et dernier panéliste, Adrien Mota. Donc, Adrien Mota is the Acting Associate Vice President of Research, Knowledge Translation and Ethics at the Canadian Institute of Health Research. In his role, he is responsible for ensuring that CIHR supports and advances the highest international standards of excellence in health research. Merci beaucoup, Adrien, et bienvenue.
Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. Puis je vais faire ma présentation comme les autres dans les deux langues officielles. So if we could start with the first slide. And one of the things that's good about going last is that my colleagues have done a great job of covering a number of tri-agency topics. So I'll likely skim over that because I think it's important that we leave you time to ask questions. So if we could go to the next slide. And again, sorry, we have a lot of titles. Donc, je pense que Dominique, puis Marc, puis Danica, ils ont assez bien couvert ça, que les agences essayent d'être flexibles en sortant la communauté tant qu'au délai associé au COVID-19. So you can see here that we've adapted our grant administration to allow flexibility in eligible costs. We're trying to remain consistent with our agency colleagues, appreciating that we have different program designs and different restrictions that may be applied differently. And an example I'd give you is that CIHR doesn't have some of the same restrictions as NSERC and SHRC that make the automatic extension to use fund date have different implications. So you can hold more than one grant at a time, more than one project grant at a time. So we're going to roll out our extensions in an automatic way. And I know that NSERC and SHRC had a couple different considerations in doing that. And we all, I think, got to the same place. It's just that, you know, sometimes we have to do things slightly differently. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, and let's just keep going. So let's go to the next slide. Donc, pour notre concours ouvert projet du printemps 2020, comme vous savez, on a décidé que le concours n'était pas possible quand on ajustait de travailler, tous les employés travailler chez eux. Donc, ce qu'on a fait, c'est on a donné des extensions à certains qui ont fait demande dans le concours. Donc, ce qu'on est en train de faire, c'est de entrer en contact avec ces gens-là, parce que la première extension d'un an, c'est vraiment un choix. Le monde, ils peuvent choisir de prendre cette extension-là, mais ce qui arrive, c'est qu'ils n'ont pas le droit d'appliquer au concours de l'automne 2020. Et la raison, c'est on pense avoir une pression de demande plus élevée. Donc, ça aide avec ça. Donc, si vous prenez l'extension, on n'a pas le droit de faire demande. J'imagine que vous connaissez ces détails assez bien, mais il y a aussi une couple d'autres choses. Je pense qu'une des choses que la communauté a réagi, c'est qu'on a utilisé le terme « annulé » quand on a fait cette annonce-là. Puis je pense que le monde, ils ont pris ça, qu'on prend toutes les demandes puis on met ça dans la poubelle. Puis c'est pas le cas du tout. Vraiment, ceux qui ont fait demande, ils vont avoir le droit de décider d'avancer leur demande en faisant une page d'update. Puis ou sinon, ils peuvent retirer leur demande puis faire une nouvelle demande. So just a little bit more on that from the project grant perspective. You may have seen that Dr. Strong, our president, issued a correspondence recently committing to delivering the fall competition. You know, and as our agency colleagues have said, I think we're all being realistic that this is probably our reality for the next little while, whether we like it or not. I don't think it's realistic to anticipate that anyone will want to get on a plane and have thousands of reviewers fly to Ottawa to sit in hotels for a couple of days, certainly not without a vaccine. So we are planning that competition will likely be online. More than likely be online. And, you know, I'm not talking, for those of you who are familiar with the CIHR reforms, in an asynchronous format. We are working through the logistics of something like this, you know, where it would be Zoom or MS Teams or whatever the technology platform is. And really doing a synchronous or video version of the panels. What I would also say is nothing's been decided yet, and Dr. Strong's letter very much committed to consulting with people and talking through the community, their ideas and that sort of thing. And in that vein, there's a group of scientific directors, 5 of them, that have been assigned or tasked with doing this, and they've started to outreach in a targeted way to the community. And you know, we're taking a broad view at this and looking at the next 3 or 4 competitions, because anything you decide now obviously has downstream impacts. CIHR runs 2 of these a year. You know, you kind of fit them in and people can reapply. So we need to be very conscious of decisions that are made and how that will affect things further down the road for people. Comme vous le savez aussi, on a décidé que pour 3 mois, on arrêtait pas mal de nos compétitions stratégiques. Donc, c'est que les instituts y ont mis dans le public. Ça inclut nos activités. Mais c'était vraiment parce qu'il fallait stabiliser l'organisation, le monde y ajustait. Puis là, on commence à sortir de ça, comme les autres agences. Il va y avoir un plan bientôt pour comment on recommence ces initiatives-là. So on the moratorium, more to come. Like what you'll see we did in ResearchNet is we pushed everything off to after July that isn't currently active. And that's because people would see those deadlines, and even though we were saying nothing is active, they would think that the deadline was coming, and obviously so. I mean, that's just logical. So we pushed everything off. Not all those dates are meaningful is the point I would leave you with. It was to give us time to sort out what the dates would actually be and then update it so people can plan and that sort of thing. So, you know, with the project grant competition and the strategic, there's a lot of moving parts for us. So if we go to the next slide, and I think I talked about it around fall, so let's just keep going, except for, and that's okay, you can leave the slide where it is, but you know, one of the things that I think also got lost in the message, and we did a session with Kara yesterday, was really around what are you doing with the money that was planned to be invested in that competition that got postponed. Because we have, and I'll talk about it next, done a lot of COVID-19 activities. And I think people were thinking that we were stopping that versus to spend it in COVID-19. And that's not in fact the case. All the COVID-19 money was largely new. Dominique and Mark and Danica through Encirc and obviously contributed money to that, but none of the money was taken from what was planned for projects. So, you know, we generally invest about $275 million per competition twice per year. So there was about $275 planned for spring 2020. 31 million of that is what those extensions that I told you about a little bit cost in theory, right? I say in theory because it's a choice. So some people might not take that extension, although it looks like the majority are. So that leaves $244 million that we put back in the program. So that intends to go to project grants. It's not being spent on COVID-19 or anything else. It's just that 30 million goes to the extension, or that 31 million. So just to be clear on the money. So let's keep going, please. And so let's talk about COVID-19 specifically. Donc, comme Dominique a parlé, on avait un premier concours rapide d'environ 55 millions de dollars, puis ça vient pas toutes des IRC, aussi des autres agences, et un investissement nouvel du gouvernement, je pense autour de 42 millions. Donc, c'était vraiment une investition importante. And it's important to highlight that it's not just the investment of money that the other agencies made. There was a lot of human resource capital, if I could put it that way, helping us with reviewers, You know, we delivered that competition, I think, in 3 or 4 weeks, which, you know, for those of you who know CIHR, it tends to be more of a 6-month kind of process. So it really was an impressive effort, particularly by the research community and those that reviewed. Important to acknowledge those individuals that turned those high quality reviews around in about a week. But you can see this little wheel here showing you that the government also announced another $115 million to CIHR. And, you know, we've kind of parsed it out in the way that you see there. Those competitions are online now. There's one on mental health and its knowledge syntheses. The results for that are looking good for tomorrow, maybe Monday. Again, rapid, incredible response from the community, both on the application side, over 200 applications, and the reviewers. We actually, you know, kind of blasted out wide to make sure we had enough, and we actually had more reviewers than applications, so we didn't need everybody. But I think that speaks to the quality of the community that we have in Canada around being able to respond on both sides of this. The big one is the 100 million, you know, to do things like clinical trials, cohort studies, you know, have people scale up or pivot. Vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, public health is in there. And, you know, that looks like the first call a little bit, but, you know, we're in a different phase of the pandemic, more around more around mitigation now than containment that we were in the first. But I think one thing to highlight about both these calls is the research that we're seeing is not just, you know, in a very narrow, in a very health focus. There's a lot from the NSC and the social sciences and humanities. And you saw that come out in the funding decisions from the first competition. So I think that's important. So I can certainly speak probably all day about this, but just to finish maybe, il y avait plus de 1500 demandes dans ce concours-là de 100 millions de dollars. On se préparait pour un concours de grand nombre, peut-être pas aussi grand que ça, faut être honnête. Mais comme pour le concours, on a environ 1000 évaluateurs qui ont levé leur main pour participer. Donc, on est bien placé pour livrer ce concours-là comme que la communauté would expect. Sorry. Can we switch slides, please? So on the tri-agency side, and this is where I'll stop because I think you can go to the next slide. Thanks. I'm inept technology-wise, so I appreciate that someone's helping me with this. So Dominique and Mark and Danica covered all this really well, and I think this is where I'll stop. But we're in it with them. You know, I think it's very positive that that first tranche of money to support people, because it's students and people paid off of grants, and you know, we're working through the details as they've said. So I will stop there just so we can leave a good amount of time for people to ask questions. The chat has caught my eye as things flash by. So thanks for the time, everyone, and I'll hand it back over.
OK. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Mota, et un grand merci à nos 4 panélistes. Donc, la période de questions est ouverte. Vous pouvez poser vos questions dans le chat. Nous avons aussi reçu des questions à l'avance, donc je vais déjà commencer par certaines de ces questions-là. Je vois aussi qu'il y a plusieurs questions. Malheureusement, nous ne pourrons pas tout couvrir, comme je l'ai dit au début. Donc, first question, once research and travel are open up to general population, will current accommodations still be available for trainees and researchers who, for age, health, and disability reason, cannot safely resume their research and travel? In short, how can we make sure that the transition away from blanket accommodation is equitable?
Yeah, and thank you for providing the question in advance, you know, because that's definitely a major question. We've seen, for the moment, we've heard, we've started to see data about how that pandemic is impacting differently different groups, and that is an extreme concern of us, because it's true that our programming, even if we, when we do the design of the program, we definitely think about these questions of a gender-based plus analysis and trying to think about the differential impact, but planning for the differential impact of a pandemic was not something that we did initially. So at this point, it's really to try to see how to use the systems that are already in place. If it's about the career interruptions, how are we going to introduce guidelines about how the committees needs to consider these interruptions due to COVID? If you're saying about researchers that cannot at all do the research, then it's another challenge. And we're going to have to see, you know, we've started collecting data on the 4 designated group 2 years ago. I think we have 2 cohorts in our regular programming. I think it's going to be critical to monitor the application statistics at the next competition, and then course correct, because these statistics cannot be used in the adjudication. They are supposed to be used only for statistical purposes. That is what we say to the people when we collect the information. So find it really important that we're going to use those statistics and try then to work at the Tri-Council level to put in place measures that are going to be supportive of these groups as needed.
Est-ce que vous voulez ajouter quelque chose d'autre, les autres panélistes, s'il vous plaît?
I just want to, I mean, Dominique covered it very, very well. I just wanted to add as well that we're seeing an increased evidence base and a lot of things being published in the literature now of how it's not just a disruption to the COVID, disruption due to COVID in your research, but that there's a growing disparity in some groups as well. That it's not just that some people aren't getting their work done, it's that some people are being extra productive during this time because of their circumstances, and others are being completely shut down in some cases. So how do you account for that in the context of peer review? And that's something that's been top of mind for me, and we've been discussing among the 3 agencies. So we will continue to work on that to provide the guidance to both applicants and peer reviewers this year.
Merci. Monsieur Fortin, Monsieur Mota?
Thank you. And I think my colleagues have covered this well, but maybe I'll come at this from a different perspective, because I think, you know, equity, diversity, and inclusion has been an important priority for the agencies over the past number of years. And certainly, you know, we're not patting ourselves on the back, because we do have a ways to go. And, you know, often you'll hear people talk about, you know, don't waste a good crisis. And, you know, I think part of this is teaching us that there are ways to do things that might not be consistent with how we've always done them, and we can learn from that. And I'll give you an example from a diversity perspective. You know, when we were out in Vancouver before this all hit, someone who was probably early career, mid-career, said to me, like, why can't I participate in your panels via video conference? Like, I don't want to fly to Ottawa for 3 days because I have to come from Vancouver, and so I have to leave early one day, and, you know, I miss some of my kids' soccer games, and, you know, if you let me participate by video, I could do it. I'd be done at 5. I can go back to my family. And so I think, you know, formats like these are forcing us to learn how to do it. And as we return to whatever our normal is, I think we can learn from some of that and implement it into our practices. And I mean, the other one, and I think some of what people are asking around the policy considerations for those who can't participate in the same way, whether it's peer review activities, how do we consider that? How do we build it into policies with respect to eligibility of costs? And so, you know, I think the agencies are able to learn a lot from this, even if it was, you know, I use the word forced, it's not the right word, but, you know, we're required to innovate and to reconsider things because of this. And I think that will help us raise the bar even more than we have.
OK, merci. Je vais aller avec la deuxième question. Comment l'annonce du 15 mai du Premier ministre quant au soutien financier à la recherche se traduira-t-elle pour les titulaires de subventions de recherche du CRSNG?
Well, the question is about inserts pour le CRSNG, donc ça pourrait être le CRSNG qui répond. C'est l'investissement de 291 000 $ qui est le principal soutien direct à tous les financements de recherche fédéraux. L'annonce du 15 mai, le 450 millions de dollars, aura bien sûr un volet pour supporter la recherche fédérale. Le volet principal reste de supporter les salaires et les étudiants sur le reste de la recherche qui n'était pas financée par le fédéral, et il y aura des contributions pour les coûts associés au disruption. J'ai toujours de la difficulté avec ce mot-là en français, les disruptions, ça n'existe pas vraiment, avec les problèmes d'entretien et puis pour repartir la recherche et tous les coûts associés à la pandémie. Mais ce sera le volet qu'on dirait congru de la subvention.
OK. Monsieur Fortin?
Well, alors, so the $291 million is really the component that will allow us to support personnel in the labs during the interruptions en français, causées par la pandémie. This announcement, as we've mentioned, was made a little while ago by the Prime Minister. We've been waiting for and asking for just about every day more direction on how this will be rolled out. And we expect, as we said, to be able to provide more details perhaps as early as next week, if we cross our fingers. We know that people need to have those answers. The message we'd like to send now, I think, from the three councils is we need to stabilize the teams. We recognize that need, and there is funding that is coming from that $291 million, either in the forms of scholarships, fellowships, but also in the form of supplementing research grants in order to provide salary to people who were normally paid by those grants.
Okay, merci. Une autre question, will individuals who are in an automatic one-year extension period not eligible for a financial extension receive a time extension to complete project activities, spend funds?
I can take this one, and my colleagues can correct me. Yes, so if you're not eligible for financial extension, you are likely eligible for an extension in time. This has been a practice of ours even prior to the pandemic. What we announced at the start of the pandemic was simply automatically extending or giving that provision to the institutions to allow them to proceed more quickly. But yes, if you are coming up and wanting some more time to spend your funds, just contact us, whichever agency you're working through, and we can make sure that happens. I think it should be fairly straightforward.
OK. Est-ce que quelqu'un veut ajouter quelque chose? OK. J'ai plusieurs questions. Alors, on avance. How will the agencies address situations where projects are delayed by expense, but expenses were already incurred and will need to be re-incurred? Nous avons eu cette question-là sous différents formats, donc si vous pouvez vraiment donner des détails, ce serait apprécié.
On the question, I mean, we're coming back to the same $291 million announcement. This will provide additional funding, new funding, understanding that people continue to be paid during the interruptions, during the disruptions. And we, the Government of Canada, will provide additional funding to grantees to compensate for the fact that we hope people continue to be paid, that the teams continue to be kept whole. And that funding, again, will have more details, hopefully next week, to share with the community.
OK. La même question sur le chat, mais sous une autre forme. VPM annonce $450 million in temporary wage support to be administered via Federal Granting Agency. Can someone provide info on how this money will reach research personnel?
So this has just been announced last Friday by the Prime Minister. So at that moment, we're planning a communique by the 3 agencies that will provide further detail on how this will work. The principles are an allocation to institutions so that the money can flow rapidly initially, especially for the salaries. And there's another component in that 450 million to support the maintenance and the ramping up of research. I did say that a bit earlier, but in French, so totally understanding that the automatic translation sometimes is not as efficient. So that's really the core of how this is going, and we're still working on the mechanism at the tri-council level and our colleagues across the agencies and partners to establish that process of how the money will flow.
Parfait. Donc, une question beaucoup plus spécifique. My SSHRC Inside Grant was extended by 1 year. Will typical extension for an additional year to allow use of not yet spent funding also be granted, even if we got a COVID extension?
Yes. So this is really the COVID extension is an additional extension, and definitely all the other extensions are available to the community. And I think it's the same for my colleagues.
Parfait. With respect to CIHR spring competition funding, will there be bridge funding available in order to support a research coordinator or a postdoc to keep the project going? How can we access these funds? J'imagine, Monsieur Mota, ça ce serait pour vous.
Oui, merci. So we won't go back to the slides, but you know, when we postponed that competition, we had 2 blocks of extensions, right? One was a 1-year extension if you applied to the competition and you had a grant that fell in a certain window of expiry date. The logic for that was because you were coming for some sort of continuity of funding. And then there were bridge grants that were provided to a group of people that were in a similar type situation. And, you know, the agency considered a number of other cohorts of, you know, should we extend these as well? And, you know, you have to balance that with cost, because certainly arguments can be made for a lot of different groups and why we would provide access to bridge funding. So the question about can I get money for a postdoc or a research associate, under the current rules, you know, it's if you had one of those grants. If you didn't, and you're looking to apply to a program to supplement, or you know, you're running into a funding gap, we don't currently have that. That said, you know, a number of groups have reached out to us and asked us to consider additional, you know, buckets in how we would adjudicate that, whether it's, you know, early career researchers or mid-career, or, you know, you can imagine the permutations of that start to come into play. And so, as I said earlier, you know, the working group of scientific directors is really tackling the issue of what do we do, or how are we going to do, you know, with the postponed competition and the others, and do any of these suggestions need to be considered? And so, right now, if you're not in one of those 2 groups, you know, there isn't an avenue currently, and as Dr. Strong committed to in his letter, you know, we're going to get out by July 1 at the latest with how we're going to go forward with that program.
Parfait. Une question pour tous les 4. Si la crise se prolonge, est-ce que les organismes subventionnaires fédéraux prévoient également prolonger le financement des étudiants au-delà des 4 mois qui ont déjà été annoncés?
Nous sommes tous dans une situation où il est très difficile de prévoir l'évolution de la crise, l'évolution de la pandémie. Malheureusement ou heureusement, au Conseil subventionnaire, nous n'avons pas de boule de cristal, nous ne pouvons pas prédire le futur, mais ce que nous pouvons faire, c'est continuer de nous ajuster, continuer de faire des ajustements et à s'adapter à la situation, comme vous tous. Nous travaillons avec vous, la communauté, pour bien comprendre les impacts et les difficultés auxquelles vous faites face. Et nous travaillons également avec le gouvernement pour pouvoir obtenir les flexibilités dont nous avons besoin et le financement additionnel lorsque nécessaire. Alors, c'est une situation qui évolue. Ce n'est pas le point final aujourd'hui. C'est une conversation avec vous qu'on espère continuer et qu'on espère aussi avoir votre patience au fur et à mesure qu'on met les mesures en place.
Parfait. Est-ce que quelqu'un veut ajouter? Oui. Madame Bérubé, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, et j'avais répondu sur le chat également parce que cette capacité pour le CRSH, si on offrait un semestre additionnel à tous nos boursiers, ça représenterait un investissement d'environ 50 à 60 millions de dollars, ce qui est le budget entier disponible pour toutes nos compétitions l'année prochaine. Ça voudrait dire annuler toutes les compétitions l'année prochaine, pas de nouveaux chercheurs qui peuvent appliquer, pas de nouveaux titulaires de bourse de doctorat, plus de nouveaux soutiens à des postdoctorants. Donc, ça veut vraiment dire arrêter toute la cohorte qui s'en vient en arrière pour être capable de prolonger la cohorte active. Les deux sont tout aussi importantes l'une que l'autre et c'est la balance entre les deux. So really a question of if we were to provide extensions to all active award holders, that's 50 to 60 million to shirts, that's a full year budget, cancellations of all of our grants and our scholarship competitions to be able to do something like that. So compromising access for the future generation as compared to the active one. Both are just as important for us in terms of what we need to do. If the government provides additional investments because the pandemic continues, that's definitely something we can continue the conversation with the government. Obviously, as you can see, the government has a lot of priorities related to COVID, so we're somewhere in that list. So it was really important to focus on a quick action, understanding that the details have been long to reach the community. So I'll just take the opportunity also to correct, or at least to a precision. There was a lot of questions about for the extensions of the award holders on the 291 million, is it automatic? When we say automatic, we mean that there's not a grant application to do. They don't need to apply with a research project. They will still have to request the extension because we need to validate some normal conditions, such as are they still enrolled in universities. So automatic in the sense you're automatically eligible, we still need to put in place the process.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Is there a new plan release date for Tree Council research data management policy? Will it still be the case that institution will have approximately 1 year from the policy release date to develop a release of their own institutional RDM strategy? Okay.
Well, if I can answer, and perhaps my colleagues again can correct me, on my side, this is something that falls under our corporate policy team. I have not heard from them up until this moment around whether or not that would be eligible. What I can commit to is bringing it to them and getting that information and then sharing it with this group afterwards, unless my colleagues have had any input from on their sides. Nothing. Okay.
So maybe I'll just jump in, and at the risk of being unpopular with our colleagues, I think my colleagues, I think one way to look at it is, the agencies, and Dominique touched on some of the tri-agency stuff in her presentation, like TGMS and all that, but the agencies are adapting as we go forward. So for CIHR, we had talked about releasing our strategic plan in June 2020, and obviously that's unlikely to happen. And so I think all of these things, whether it's research data management or whatever it is, work is ongoing internally. And like Danica, this isn't a file that I regularly interact with. And I thought I saw something a while ago that, they were rethinking the implementation plan, although I don't want to commit to that because I don't know exactly what it is. So I think, we're being reasonable, understanding that everyone is impacted by this, and research data management isn't necessarily the top priority for anyone right now. And So we'll adjust the timeline in a way that's reasonable as we see this evolves, and that's true of almost all of our activities.
Parfait. Une question ici. Single parent researchers have to manage homeschooling along with demand of their faculty position. This is already being seen in the increase in publication submission by men and a decrease for women researchers. What are the three council agencies planning to do to address these inequities? And note, single parents are also male like myself, but are likely in the minority. Oui.
Wasn't sure if I had my hand up first. So this is similar to the question that we had on equity in terms of returning back to work and ramping up of research again. And I am also, I'm not single parenting, but I am parenting a small child from home while trying to work. And so I feel your pain, whoever asked this question. So this is a likely occurrence. We recognize the demands. And again, this is just going to lead to, between transitioning to online learning for a lot of the PIs, not being able to do your research, particularly if you're in an experiential kind of research environment, then having to take care of a small child all day long basically means you're not going to be productive at this point, and we recognize that. So coming into our programs, we are trying to find ways to account for that as well, not only in the applications, but in the peer review guidance as well. And in any policy work that we can do. So we're trying to take the whole spectrum and take this into account. And again, recognizing the growing disparity and inequities that we're seeing as the pandemic continues, trying to take that into account as well. So it's certainly something that we're extremely mindful of. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you're an NSERC researcher, and I would be happy to kind of take any advice and suggestions that you have for how to include this in our peer review.
Okay. Merci. Une autre question. Many small companies have been actively supporting collaborative research with universities, but are also impacted with the current situation. Je vais sauter certaines parties. How NSERC plan to react if companies are unable to meet fully or partially their commitment?
So this is something that we are concerned about, very concerned about. We certainly recognize that the pandemic has changed the cash flow, not only of companies, I would say, but also of not-for-profit or public sector organizations who are also partners in projects. So the cash flow situation has changed. Investments in research and development will be difficult to defend going forward for many organizations. If they are laying off people on their production floors, how can they continue to invest in R&D? Many companies or many organizations will be focused on the short term, and we understand that. So this is something that we've documented. We've done a short survey of many of our partners, and to try to identify the level or the extent to which they will face challenges. We have shared that data with the Government of Canada, with ISED, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Department. And we're working with them at the moment to find ways to provide relief to companies and to other organizations in their financial commitments to joint projects with universities and colleges. So this is work in progress, conversations that are happening with government, but we are aware and we are sensitive to that. We do not want to come out of this crisis with a weakened R&D system in Canada. So we must take action to protect the investments in R&D that will fuel, perhaps eventually, the recovery, the economic recovery.
Okay, merci. Est-ce que vous voulez ajouter quelque chose, Madame Bérébé?
This
Parfait.
question for insert, so
OK. Une autre question. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a particularly negative impact on early career investigators who need grants to get their research program established. What will the Tree Council do to ensure funding competition continue for early career scientists? And will there be any adjustment to funding criteria to account for the lost productivity during this time period? Oui.
I'm happy to start off. So obviously, the impact on early career researchers is something that we're quite concerned about. And again, I would be happy to receive any direct information to that end. What we're doing, at least on the research grants and scholarship side at NSERC, and I don't want to speak for the partnership side, but the discovery grants competition that we have upcoming in 2021, we have offered extensions on those who already have a discovery grant. If you're a new early career researcher or new coming into the discovery grant competition, that competition is going to go ahead. And my sense, I don't know the numbers and I can't guess at who's going to renew or not, but my sense is that it will be a fairly heavy competition for early career researchers this year. There will be a lot more prevalence of early career researchers coming into that. And in terms of the actual review process, we will be taking into account the impacts of COVID in the design of the program and the peer review and guidance to both applicants and reviewers. So I think there's a lot of support on the discovery side there to offer. We also have our discovery launch supplements, which we offer in addition to a discovery grant for our early career researchers, which provides them in their first year of a discovery grant extra funding to help get them off the ground.
Une question ici pour laquelle je suis biaisé, mais je vais la poser. Est-ce que les trois conseils, vous prévoyez quelque chose pour les universités francophones et particulièrement pour les petites universités francophones en contexte minoritaire qui n'ont pas nécessairement des programmes gradués, mais où il y a des chercheurs très prometteurs?
Je pense que c'est, pour le CRSH, je pense que c'est une conversation continue que l'on a. On a eu plusieurs conversations et échanges de lettres. Le président Ted Hewitt participait récemment à justement une conversation avec l'ACFAS et les universités en milieu francophone hors Québec et certainement un engagement à augmenter notre attention à ces questions et puis à poursuivre le développement autour de ça. Je pense qu'on a à l'interne, je ne veux rien révéler aujourd'hui parce qu'on n'a rien de formellement en place encore, mais on est en train de regarder. On donne déjà du côté du CRSH des subventions par institution, des subventions institutionnelles. Il y a évidemment une subvention pour les petits établissements. On a changé le programme il y a quelques années justement pour ça, pour soutenir les petits établissements et le développement de ces chercheurs très prometteurs dans les petits établissements. Donc, c'est décidément quelque chose qu'on continue, mais qui est en dehors, je dirais, de la discussion COVID-19 en particulier, à moins que vous ayez des préoccupations particulières reliées à la pandémie à souligner pour les institutions francophones.
Okay. Parfait. Est-ce que vous voulez ajouter quelque chose, les autres, ou ça? Oui.
Oui, pour le CRSNG, nous avons le programme DDG, je ne sais pas le nom en français malheureusement, qui soutient les chercheurs des petites universités et fournit un financement supplémentaire aussi. Alors, on a ça, mais ce n'est pas pour les universités francophones, mais c'est pour les petites universités.
Okay.
Oui, pour les IRSC, je dirais, écoutez, il ne faut pas s'en cacher que c'est vraiment quelque chose qui est sur notre agenda parce que, comme vous le savez peut-être, on avait une initiative prise il y a, je pense, 5 ou 6 ans, une initiative qui était dédiée aux petites universités dans la communauté langue minoritaire. Puis c'est quelque chose qui était annulé dans le contexte des changements qu'on a faits. mais plus récemment, c'est quelque chose qui revient sur l'agenda parce que c'est quelque chose d'important. Puis je comprends qu'il y a une distinction entre langue communauté et langue minoritaire, puis faire demande en français. Mais on les lit peut-être des fois un peu trop, mais je pense qu'ils vont main en main en certains cas. Donc, c'est quelque chose que notre conseil gouvernant nous a demandé de mettre sur, d'avancer sur le plan parce que c'est certainement important. Donc, comme Dominique, il n'y a rien que je peux dire de concret aujourd'hui, autre que c'est une priorité pour les IRSC.
OK. Parfait. Donc, je vais poser une dernière question et puis je vais vous demander de profiter de cette question-là pour conclure aussi, si vous pouvez ajouter quelques mots de conclusion. Et puis, j'aimerais vous remercier, les 4 panélistes. C'était vraiment très, très, très instructif et malheureusement, nous n'avons pas pu répondre à toutes les questions. Il y en a plusieurs. Il va certainement y avoir un autre panel sur le sujet, je n'en doute pas. Et j'aimerais dire que aussi, ceci va être, cette séance est enregistrée et va être disponible. Donc, la question qui est là, c'est how will funding for application in the future year be impacted? Will a greater proportion of funding be directed toward COVID-19 related research? Will non-COVID research still receive funding? Donc, il y a beaucoup d'inquiétudes sur l'avenir. Comment vous voyez que la crise, quel impact ça va avoir sur vos politiques de financement respectives? Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez dire aux chercheurs? Comment vous envisagez l'avenir dans le fond?
So on my end, certainly COVID research is very important at this time, and we need to make sure that we're supporting it to the best of our abilities. That said, the bulk of our work, 99% of what NSERC supports is non-COVID research, and that's as important, if not more important in the long run for our society and our environment and our economy. And so certainly we will continue supporting non-COVID research. It's very, very important to have this base of knowledge always generated and ensuring that there's new ideas coming into the system. Science will never stop and research will never stop. So that will always be supported. In terms of impacts financially, we are monitoring this day in and day out to make sure that we aren't missing something or are going to be surprised by any sort of big budget hit in the future. So certainly we are on top of it, and on our end, we are trying to manage the budget so that there's no real impact on our research to the best of our abilities.
Okay.
Je vais en profiter, and Dominique, I think you have a bee in your hair, just so it doesn't sting you maybe. So I think that's an important question, and sorry, I want to take care of that. It's a bit distracting. So I think let me start by echoing what Danique is saying, and I'll reinforce the point that I made earlier. All the investment that CHR has made have been new money from the government. It's not existing money that we're putting into that. So I wouldn't want anyone leaving today thinking that our fall project grant competition will be half COVID-19, half non. Like there's no plan like that. And we don't know how the pandemic will evolve, and so like Mark said, there's no crystal ball. But I think all the councils, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, understand the importance, as Danica said, of non-COVID-19 research, because as we reboot and recover, or whatever words you want to use, from a health perspective, things like diabetes, cancer, public health, pick whatever one your favorite is, likely become increasingly important given the impacts of this. And so while it made sense, or it continues to make sense, to make these investments into COVID-19 research to figure out a vaccine or an antibody, or issues around racism and economic impacts, it's not a long-term plan for the agencies to be diverting, or certainly not CHR to be diverting money dedicated to open research. That's still our business. And reflecting from a CHR perspective, I think when we postponed the competition, that was some of the reaction that decision elicited, that maybe that other stuff or the other non-COVID-19 research was not important, and that's certainly not the case. And maybe since this is a conclusion, you know, I saw a lot of great questions in the chat, and I've been trying to follow along. You know, I would encourage you to reach out to me or my colleagues with your question, and we will answer them. I know we didn't get a chance to touch on everything today.
Monsieur Fortin?
Oui, bien sûr. Alors, un mot de la fin. La préoccupation des trois agences, je crois que je peux le dire pour les trois agences, a été de stabiliser les projets et les équipes. Stabiliser les équipes en fournissant des fonds additionnels, détails à venir la semaine prochaine, des fonds additionnels pour s'assurer que les gens demeurent en place, que les gens soient payés. On a fourni des extensions pour les projets, il y a des différentes formules d'extension qui ont été mises en place pour les projets. Donc, stabiliser les équipes, stabiliser les projets. Je parlais un peu plus tôt de stabiliser les investissements en recherche et développement sur un plus long terme, dans une perspective d'écosystème. Nous avons offert aussi des possibilités à la communauté de la recherche de contribuer à des solutions. Je parlais des subventions COVID Alliance. Il y a un peu plus de 500 demandes de financement qui sont en préparation. Certaines ont déjà été approuvées. 500 demandes de financement à différents stades de préparation qui ont été soumises. Il y a un potentiel énorme dans la communauté scientifique pour contribuer des solutions, des pistes de solutions à la crise à laquelle nous faisons face. Et nous pouvons tous être très fiers de la réponse de la communauté scientifique envers cette situation-là. Alors, nous allons continuer à travailler avec la communauté et nous allons continuer à nous adapter en fonction du développement de la pandémie. Je vous remercie à tous d'avoir été ici.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, peut-être pour faire la transition à partir de ce que Marc, c'est vraiment une excellente transition parce que c'est un peu aussi de ce qu'on a entendu de notre communauté, you know, consulting with the SSHRC leaders and everything. There was a huge concern in the community, and I see it in the chat also coming up, about the capacity to pivoting the research and adapting the research, because the SSHRC community is really concerned about how this is transforming, you know, when CIHR is launching some COVID-19 initiatives, it's about quick response, finding a virus, finding some tests, developing some tests, and NSERC can provide that technology and that comment. When we think about how this is transforming the society and how Canada is going to be post-COVID, then that's when our researchers suddenly, within everything they do, they see a difference. You know, they suddenly see that, oh, this is whatever I was doing before is really different now. So we do recognize, you know, and yes, we have all the mechanisms to allow the researchers, they receive grants. You know, they don't need to tell us that they're changing the topics. They can just decide to reorient their research, and they just publish on their research. And then when they reapply, they just say that they did a great thing on COVID-19. So we already have that flexibility. So that's why we don't think we need to launch special COVID-19. What's going to be the struggle are all those projects that are going to be stopped for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. What do we do? You know, it's not the first time that a project would be stopped because of sudden changes of legislation or something else, but now it's just a large scale interruption of those research projects that is going to be difficult to address. And then I saw that my colleagues that were responding to the questions were really recommending to contact the agency. As Adrian mentioned also, we're there to support you and see what kind of solutions we can look into for those specific. So really thanking everybody. Merci infiniment pour votre présence, votre participation, vos questions, et on espère pouvoir rester engagés avec vous tous au cours des prochaines semaines et mois.
OK. Un grand merci à nos panélistes encore. J'aimerais très rapidement remercier Madame Justine de Jaguer, que vous ne voyez pas, mais qui a fait un travail colossal derrière tout ça. Christina Muelberger, que vous ne voyez pas non plus. Pam Foster, que vous ne voyez pas non plus. Donc, c'est moi la face de CAUT ici, mais derrière, il y a un travail colossal. Et il y a aussi, bien sûr, l'interprétation simultanée. Un grand merci. Et ceci, c'est vraiment le début de la conversation, pas la fin. Certainement que Nous serons plus qu'heureux de vous avoir les 4 ici encore pour poursuivre cette conversation. Merci tout le monde et puis merci bien sûr aux participants. Merci tout le monde et à la prochaine.
Yeah, good luck to all.
Merci, thank you.
Merci, thank you.